Forbes just dropped a new article exposing the looming debt spiral and sending a massive Bitcoin warning. Bitcoin could be setting up a perfect storm if the money printer is about to be turned on in September, right as Bitcoin exits what is historically its worst month. And this time could be different. I know I'm starting the show off with this time could be different, but it just might be. Anyways, let's dive straight into this article that explains the path to $2 million Bitcoin and really why we are probably on the verge of something great. Anyways, I'm not alone. I got our boy Kent from Sales Mining. And of course, Nico is going to cover this article because I don't have Forbes here. They locked me out of this. So Nico, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so check out this headline. I mean, this is crazy. This isn't a Simply Bitcoin title. This is literally a Forbes headline. And for the audio listeners, it's dollar heart attack. $12 trillion Fed crisis predicted to drive Bitcoin to $2 million per coin. It's kind of really interesting that they're talking about this, Opti, because kind of connecting the dots with, I think it was yesterday, we were talking about how in France, and I think also Germany, I think it was the UK actually, you pulled up all these you pulled up all these articles where those governments are having a hard time selling bonds, right? So it seems like there's this like turmoil going on, not just in Europe, but also in the United States as well. And this is the case. This is and we have a clip from Larry Lepard that we're going to play for you guys later on the show. And he's making the case as well. Like basically the TLDR is this: nothing stops this train. Inevitably, they're going to have to print when the system starts to falter. And if you see the interactions between Trump and Jerome Powell, Trump's just, hitting, metaphorically, of course, Jerome Powell, with the too late Powell, and then he's just showing up at the Fed, like criticizing how much money they're spending on the, on the renovation. I don't know how a building could cost $3 billion to renovate, but anyways, just check out some of the key parts of this article that substantiates this bombastic headline, because that's really what it is. So here's Powell, I guess, reacting to $2 million per coin. I'm assuming Christine Lagarde would have the same reaction. It's like a reaction of surprise, disbelief, and then understanding that the central banking system is never going to be able to compete. But of course, they're taking that out of context, but that's what those pictures are all about. Anyways, the first quote I want to read for you guys is: "When Bitcoin wins, it ends the Fed." Balaji, the author of The Network State, who left Coinbase in 2019, said during a speech at Bitcoin Asia. And what does that mean? When Bitcoin wins, the Fed loses control. It's such a great picture for that. Such a fitting picture. Balaji, who made headlines with his incorrect $1 million Bitcoin price prediction in 2023, said Bitcoin's fixed supply of 21 million will see the Fed's gyrating rates get replaced by algorithmic monetary policy. Government debt continues to surge. Quote, this is only going to get worse as inflation picks up, Balaji said. Referring to the U.S. debt pile that ballooned to $37 trillion this year, falling out of control pandemic-era spending, feared to be spiraling into a debt doom loop, as James Lavish calls it, as higher interest rates force the government to print more money to service the debt ceiling. What would be really cool to pull up, Opti? The block. Maybe we can reference that a little bit later. So the article continues. Hedge fund billionaire Ray Dalio, who isn't necessarily like a hardcore Bitcoiner, the founder of Bridgewater Associates, has warned that the spiraling U.S. debt pile is, quote, likely cause a debt-induced heart attack in the relatively near future. I would say 3 years, give or take a year or two. Dalio posting responses to Financial Times questions on X after claiming its reporting had mischaracterized his position, pointing to the $1 trillion a year interest on the $37 trillion debt and $9 trillion needed to roll over the debt as squeezing, quote, out other spending. The more that happens, the closer the country is to a debt-induced economic heart attack. According to Dalio, quote, the federal government will spend about $7 trillion and take in only about $5 trillion. So it will have to sell an additional roughly $2 trillion in debt. We talk about this Literally, you hear me say this every single day. Now, how are they able to do that? They print the difference, right? And of course, that causes inflation. In addition to the $1 trillion it has to sell to pay interest, plus the $9 trillion it has to raise to roll over the debt. The Federal Reserve, which is under attack from U.S. President Donald Trump, White House, due to the Fed Chair Jerome Powell's refusal to reduce interest rates, is widely expected to restart its interest rate cutting cycle this month, risking the Fed allowing inflation to run hot after prices have begun to rise again over the summer. Quote, this would lead bonds and the dollar to go down in value, and if not rectified, would lead them to being an ineffective storehold of wealth, which they already are, in my opinion, and breaking down the monetary order as we know it. I mean, it's almost as if Bitcoiners are like 10 years early to like... Do you think Dalio watches Simply Opti? Dalio went on to predict the Bitcoin price and other cryptocurrencies would likely to be a beneficiary of the Fed's weakening of the US dollar. Scratch that. He definitely does. Crypto is now an alternative currency that has its supply limited, so all things being equal, it's the supply of the dollar money rises and or the demand for it falls that would likely make crypto an attractive alternative currency. This is nuts. This is crazy. We went from Larry Fink being a skeptic, Michael Saylor being a skeptic, President Trump being a skeptic, to now the famous legendary investor Ray Dalio even saying like, look, when push comes to shove, when they eventually turn on the money printers again, you know, Bitcoin's going to go to the moon. He's saying the quiet part. He's saying what all of us are saying. He's saying what all of us have been saying for years now. You don't need a master's degree to be a master investor to do the math. It's infinity divided by 21 million. It's very simple, straightforward math. Anyways, quote, I think that most fiat currencies, especially with those with large debts, will have problems being effective storeholds of wealth and will go down in value relative to hard currencies. This is what happened in the 1930s to 1940 period and the 1970 to 1980 period. The $200 trillion debt spiral means the U.S. can't stop printing, says Max Kaiser. Of course, you guys all know who Max Kaiser at this point is. Max Kaiser predicted that the gap between have-nots and have-yachts will grow rapidly, leading to Bitcoin exploding to a $2 million price. We've also been, it's Opti, it's almost as if we know what we're talking about.
I know, surprising.
This is what I've been talking about, the rising in wealth inequality. You're starting to see that on social media. You have very predominant figures calling for, hey, listen, there's crazy wealth inequality. You can't afford housing. You see that on right-wing commentary and on left-wing commentary. But I think where the left and the right both get it wrong is they have it actually, from my understanding of their content, from what I've seen, and Opti, correct me if I'm wrong here, if you believe it's any different, I haven't seen any of them correctly identify the actual problem with the system itself. And the solution is not more government and it's not more politics. It's fixing the money itself. The money itself being broken is what's causing the inequality. The mechanism is very simple. Every time they print money, people that own assets, they get wealthier on paper. Everybody else who's living paycheck to paycheck, they get poorer. Their purchasing power in the money that they're earning starts to go down, and their savings in fiat starts to go down. The wealthy that do have that disposable income to park in assets, those assets are going to go through the roof once they start printing money, right? It's that simple. Like, that is literally the cause of wealth inequality. Anyways, it goes on to say, the Fed and its chair, Jerome Powell, have been sharply criticized by, I think I read that. But anyways, it continues to say, the row between Trump and the Fed has been brewing for years. Accusations of political bias, beginning with Powell incorrectly called post-pandemic lockdown inflation transitory. Remember that? That was really fun to cover. I mean, that's another thing Simply Bitcoin got right, dude. And it's crazy too, because when that stuff was happening, me and Opti were like screaming. It's like, dude, there's no way this is transitory. And if you look at all of legacy media, right, the people in the suits on TV with the chyrons and the professional production, they had Janet Yellen on, and Janet Yellen's like, no, it's going to be transitory. And somehow, right, some self-taught content creators on YouTube, somehow we got it right and everyone else got it wrong. Like, no, I just refuse to believe that. I think it's a system. They're trying to protect the system. And I think if you take the orange pill, if you're on a Bitcoin stand, it becomes incredibly obvious what's going to happen, right? I mean, it's written in the Genesis block of in Bitcoin. Like, Satoshi knew. I think Satoshi, if it was a group of people or one person, I think he literally invented Bitcoin or discovered Bitcoin, depending on how you look at it, as a reaction to the great financial crisis of 2008, 2009. He knew that governments and the banks are just going to continue to print money, right? So if it's not rocket science. Like, at the end of the day, the Bitcoin white paper is like 9 pages. Like, this isn't very difficult to, like, you can overcomplicate it and you can financialize it and you can add financialese and you can come up with all these crazy, and I think they do that on purpose to, like, overcomplicate it and, like, intimidate people. It's like, oh, like, I'm sure the money's backed by gold or something. I think it is called the Federal Reserve. Like, it's meant for you not to ask questions. But once you start looking behind the hood, you realize there's, like, nothing there and the money is literally just paper, right? Anyhow, the article continues to say, and I think this is another quote by Balaji, when Bitcoin wins, fiat billionaires get flipped. Years ago at Coinbase, we calculated that somewhere between $100,000 and $1 million per Bitcoin, half of the world's billionaires are made up of those that hold Bitcoin. Quote, all wealth becomes crypto, all property becomes cryptography, and that means global wealth becomes crypto. And so that's what we call the billionaire flippening, and that kind of already underway. And you're going to see that in the next few years. So what a fantastic article, starting Wednesday off strong, putting all these pieces together that might not be there. But I mean, we got quotes from Ray Dalio, we got quotes from Donald Trump, we got quotes from Balaji. And I want to pat ourselves on the back a little bit, Opti. Dude, did we get things right? Tomorrow's Bitcoin news today here at Simply. Dude, it's almost as if, are we journalists at this point? Like, do we get a journalist pin? We get like a journalist pin?
Do we get official journalist credentialism here, Nico? How do we apply for that?
Is that a thing? Because, like, bro, like, all of those things in the article, like, we were, if you guys have been tuning, the Simply Bitcoin's been around for 5 years at this point. If you guys have been tuning into the show, every single one of those things we got right. Like, I don't think we got one of those things wrong, Opti. So that's pretty dope. Opti, what's your take, bro?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think it was yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday where I was covering kind of what's going on in the bond market and what's going on with gold. And it really always kind of boils down to, once you understand Bitcoin, you at like a well enough understanding of where Bitcoin's role is in the global landscape, you really start to see the road ahead. And what's very interesting here is, I know Ray Dalio's kind of been on top of this, debt spiral for a while, but it does seem like more people are waking up to this idea, or rather, more people are acknowledging this idea that is happening right now. And we've been covering along on this for months at this point, that we're slowly starting to see the erosion of trust in the institutions, trust in the strength of the dollar, trust maybe that it's losing its world reserve currency status, and people are looking for alternatives. And now that's becoming even more clear to everyone that's not just a Bitcoiner. And that's, I think, on the one hand, very terrifying. And on the other hand, is like a very promising move here, is that people are seeing the same thing that we are. So I know Nico's kind of trolling a little bit here, or rather patting themselves on the back here, but like, we are looking at this clearly, I think. And maybe it's confirmation bias, and maybe, we're just seeing what we want to see in this. But it does make me feel a little better when I see other more influential people that have been around for a long time, billionaires kind of agreeing with what we're saying. You're like, all right, maybe we do have the right information here. And I mean, Ken and me before the show, we were talking about this idea. It's kind of off topic, but like we were talking about the idea that right now it does seem like we're in a crazier time than ever. And we're all kind of, if you're being honest with yourself and you're following along on everything, you're kind of looking at your own first principles and you're wondering, like, am I wrong here, or is everyone else wrong? Do I have to reevaluate my first principles because things are going crazier, and they seem to be going off the haywire right now? And the more information I see, the more it's kind of showing me that, yeah, we are correct. But, you know, being early is almost the same as being wrong right now. So as much as we really probably don't know exactly the timeline of what this stuff is going to do, we do know, I think, at this point, or rather are confirming that we do have the right signal here. Now, can we withstand whatever crazy onslaught of black swan madness that is upon us? Who knows? Just hopefully we are staying humble, staying solvent, you know, stacking sats throughout this whole thing, because it could go on longer than we even know. But the point remains the same. What Dalio's seeing, what a lot of us Bitcoiners have seen, especially like Lynn Alden, Larry Lepard, is all the same thing. The debt right now is unsustainable. And what the government is doing in bonds right now is really not an incentive for people to use treasuries as a store of value. And Ray Dalio hit on something very, very clearly, which really blows my mind all the time, is like, how do people look at government debt as the best, safest store of value? Like, to me, it makes no sense. It's like, how is debt a store of value? By its definition, isn't debt not that? But, you know, we live in clown world, so government debt is the best store of value. But as Ray Dalio is kind of pointing out, that kind of mimetic power is losing its strength that it used to, and people are looking for alternatives. And of course, we think Bitcoin is that alternative. Now, there is a kind of an interesting end to this article, or sorry, this tweet thread, that I think does kind of shed light on where we are right now. So this is the last response to this Financial Times questionnaire here. And they ask him, like, what is the real threat to, and they use it as American capitalism right now, but I would argue just like the global capitalist system right now. Like, what are the global threats right now? Like, what are we looking at, and where should you kind of pay attention to? And Ray Dalio, I think, lays it out like very clearly. And if you kind of go through all of these different metrics, it makes perfect sense. So he says it comes down to 5 forces that have always driven big cycle changes. One, it's the big debt cycle that will likely lead to a big debt problem that will threaten the existing monetary order. So one, we are seeing changes in the monetary order. Obviously, Bitcoin is front and center in this. It's one of the players in this. Two, we're seeing big political problems within countries that are threatening existing political orders. As we're seeing, again, one's monetary orders. Two, there seems to be a shift in the political order. Three, it leads to the big geopolitical problems. We're seeing geopolitical order shifts around the world. These are, you know, kind of the big main things people are talking about. The next one, maybe I don't agree with the framing, but he's saying, you know, there's environmental change that's going on, and that's always a factor historically. And fifth, which is where Bitcoin kind of comes back into it, though he frames it as AI, is there's a technological reordering going on right now. And the interaction of these 5 forces will lead to huge, unimaginable change over the next 5 years. And so looking at those categories, it really kind of explains Bitcoin's role in all of this going on. Like, we are seeing a shift in the monetary order. As you're probably aware, there's a shift in the political order as well, which leads to a geopolitical shift we're seeing, you know, play out everywhere right now. The environmental one, it's kind of like, I don't know about all that. He says the C word here, which I'm not the biggest fan of. But we are seeing there is a technological shift happening as well. He references AI. I think Bitcoin is the bigger technological shift, which really kind of goes full circle, and it goes back to reshifting the monetary order, which everything kind of comes down afterwards. So it is interesting that the first thing he kind of mentioned is the monetary order shift going on. As we like to say, fix the money, fix the world. You know, whether he did this on purpose or not, it goes back to what Nico just said. Like, it all starts with the money. And that's why everything comes after that. Like, whether he did that on purpose or it just happened subconsciously, I find that very interesting. So look, we are in interesting times right now, and who knows how long they can kick this can down the road. But if you can understand what Dalio is saying here, even just a little bit, you understand Bitcoin is going to play a pivotal role in this. And what's that mean for you guys holding Bitcoin? It means numbers going to go up, guys. We all know the meme. All roads lead to Bitcoin, which means number goes up forever, Laura. So, hey, just sit back, try not to wreck yourself, try not to overthink yourself throughout this process. But I think we have the signal to really kind of capitalize on this, you know, 5 force factors going on right now. And I think we're right about it. But hey, as Kent and I said before the show, things are getting crazier than ever. So you got to find some zen throughout this whole thing. So enough of me speaking for Kent. Kent, what's your thoughts when you hear this article or read this article?
Well, I just feel like the entire Bitcoin community, especially you two, need like prophet hats, right? Like this community has just been on point since the beginning. So I got my first Bitcoin the end of 2015, right? So I'm a decade into this. And what I've seen over and over again is all of us are standing on the shoulder of the giants that came before that adopted Bitcoin and started to see this clearly. I mean, Hal Finney talked about Bitcoin like right after the first blocks were being mined. And he wrote out that he saw the price prediction, it could be a $300 or $400 trillion market cap. And that means, multiple $1 million per coin. And we've seen, so from the very beginning, the people that grokked what money is and understood Bitcoin saw it as money and saw its potential. And so all of us are just sitting here like, hey, dummies, like, great, you made it to the big dance finally. Like, stop being idiots. And the sooner you get here, the sooner we get past all this global weirding that we're living through. Because I think we fundamentally underestimated or overestimated global warming and underestimated global weirding. Because the reality is, since 1971, when we divorced our money from the laws of physics, we started to move into global weirding. And I think it's been almost like this enchantment that's gone over the populace. It's just like, oh yeah, money could just not be tied to reality, and we can just have some crazy politicians decide how many zeros are on the ledger, and we're all going to be fine. And no, we're not. Like, I'm sorry. Like, when you detach yourself from reality, bad things happen, and we're kind of getting to the end of that. The problem is that we've created an entire reality in this delusional state, and as a result, Bitcoin comes along, and it's like the spell breaker. Right. It's like the first, like, as Bitcoiners, like, if you look at who we are, like, as a group and population, like, they've actually studied our personality types. Right. I don't know about you guys, but I'm sure, Myers-Briggs wise, you kind of fall in the same major categories, which is INTP or INTJ. And that's just a bunch of people that are disagreeable and latch on to truth and don't let go. And I think that that's what our community has done. And that's why we seem like crazies, because we keep just chanting like, hey, guess what? Bitcoin is reality. And I'm sorry if you don't believe it, but you're going to come around to it. And you see people like Ray Dalio and you see Michael Saylor, and they make the flip. And then you see more people, and now it's becoming socially acceptable. And this is the acceleration of Bitcoin's adoption. So, I mean, hang on to the ride, find your anchor in this reality, but just know that this is what winning looks like. This is what getting past the hangover of fiat looks like. Is just a very weird phase. And I think we're living through it. It's going to be volatile. If you haven't seen the chart of what gold's price did when Weimar Republic, post World War I Germany went through a crazy hyperinflationary time period, I'd say go study that gold to Weimar Mark chart, because what you see is the price goes like this. Like massive swings, and I'm not going to be surprised if we see it. I think the price action today is sort of just lulling us into complacency to a degree, but I don't think we're done with volatility. I mean, my prediction here is TradFi is going to probably learn the hard way and have some massive blowups, and we're going to see volatility return and the major round of volatility before the next wave of adoption occurs. But at the end of the day, when you realize that Bitcoin is money and is the place that you should store the value that you dedicate your life force to acquiring in the marketplace, when you start to save in Bitcoin and realize that that is the best form of savings, really the price doesn't matter. Yes, you might need to sell some to fund some specific life events, but at the end of the day, it's not about price. It's just about securing your savings and your future and your family's future and your bloodline's future and all that fun stuff that we like to really freak out about as a community. But hey, stay latched on to truth, and we'll get through this global weirding period and come out the other side as being kind of the kingmakers, is how I see it, because we're the ones that pointed the way the entire time.
Absolutely. I love the way that you've phrased that. And it's interesting because it's almost as if the more money has been disconnected from reality, the more wacko the world has gone. I think and I think people underestimate how much of the human experience is tied. And it sounds horrible saying this, because we always get taught this as like young kids, like, don't talk about money. Money's very ugly. Me and Nopti literally talk about money every single day. But what they're referring to, in my opinion, is they're referring to fiat money, right? Like, I think they inherently knew that fiat money is inherently evil, but what happens when that, and you saw, and you could make an argument that you saw very similar, a similar pattern with the end of the Roman Empire, right? They went through the same thing. They went through like a hyperinflationary type of situation. They didn't have paper back then. It was like more coins, but the actual silver content in coins towards the end of the empire was like minimal. Right. And if you compare that towards the beginning of the empire, you know, it was a very high percentage. Right. So it's like you kind of see this similar, like, you know, pattern play out. And Kent, you're referencing Weimar earlier, right? You could make an argument, and this is a Bitcoin show, guys, not a political show. So, you know, I'm just going to say it. But at the end of Weimar, you know, a lot of people were talking about the moral decay of society, right? You know, you look at the modern day United States, and again, this is a Bitcoin show, not a political show, but, you know, a lot of people are feeling that, you know, there's a little bit of a moral decay as well, right? And could that be connected with the money, right? Could that be connected with the fact that the more and more money gets disconnected from reality? It kind of like breaks people. Like, you know, like people's like, there's a little switch in people's minds, and they're like, okay, but maybe money just does actually grow on trees. And like they have this whole worldview where money could just be printed out of thin air and it could essentially pay for everything. But you know, if you're a Bitcoiner, you know that that's not the truth. You know that that's not the reality. You know that, you know, that's not how you create wealth. You don't create wealth by printing more money. If that were true, you know, we'd all be like trillionaires by now. You know, like that's not the case, right? So, you know, it's a very interesting situation in terms of kind of the U.S. Government's fiscal situation. And just to kind of give you guys a like reference, so you guys understand the quantity of money that we're talking about. The GDP of El Salvador is $32 billion. $32 billion, right? The US government is spending $2 trillion, that's with a T, every single year, more than it collects in tax revenue. And it's $37 trillion in debt. $37 trillion. Right? And just the interest alone, which is what that article was referring to, just the interest alone to service that debt, to pay down the debt, is $1 trillion. That's more than the GDP of most countries on planet Earth that is just being used to pay the interest on that debt. Now, the question is that sustainable? Ray Dalio believes that's going to break apart in the next 3 years. And that's the case that the article was trying to make. Like, it looks like this thing, and you start to see the signs, right? Like in France, in the UK, in the United States, the more you kind of weave in the moral decay of society into there, you see the symptoms. The symptoms are all there, right? But I'll tell you what, guys, even as a Bitcoiner, even as I know that, like, if this system starts to fall apart, you know, Bitcoin goes to $2 million per coin. If that happens in a very small amount of time, I'm telling you, you don't want that to happen. You don't want that to happen. Things will not get pretty. And I'm telling you right now that the first people they're going to target and the first people they're going to blame are Bitcoiners. Somehow it's our fault, right? So I don't want that to happen. I would actually, you know, I would want this to be boring. I want this, like, you know, this transition to be a slow and methodical process rather than like in a year, 2 years, Bitcoin rips to $2 million per coin because the global financial system is melting down. Like, that's not cool. Like, a lot of people are going to get hurt. A lot of people are going to lose their jobs. You know, a lot of people are going to lose their homes. I don't want that to happen. I don't think anybody would want that to happen, right? So I would rather want this like slow trickle adoption of Bitcoin, and then it, you know, phases out fiat currencies a little by little, rather than this, like what this article is talking about. And this isn't us being hyperbolic. Like, we're not saying that this is going to happen. Like, this isn't our narrative. This is Ray Dalio's narrative. Okay. This is his theory. Opti, could you pull up that article that you were reading? Because he said a couple good points there.
Oh, on Twitter.
The Twitter article, the last part, which was fantastic. you know, and it's very interesting the way that he phrased that. So this was a Financial Times article, I believe, right?
Well, this is so in that Forbes article, so Ray Dalio did an interview with Financial Times, and he said they made it like super political. They kind of picked and chose what he said, and so he dropped the full thing on Twitter, and it was just like a questionnaire, and I guess they just like misquoted him, and so he's like, I want to clear the air because that's not what I said, and so this is what it is on Twitter.
Okay, so a couple things here which are interesting. Like if you go up on that question, could you go up, Opti? Right? So is the real threat to American capitalism coming from the far left or from Trump's brand of interventionism? Now, that is a very loaded question. And I might not be a professional journalist, but I sure do know about framings and narrative a little bit. And what I will say is that question in and of itself is trying to, it's, how do I phrase this? It's basically forcing the person who's answering that question to answer the question incorrectly. Sorry, to answer the question on incorrect framing. Why am I saying that? What is American capitalism? Right? Like, what does that mean? Right? Because depending on who you ask, right? If you ask a Bitcoiner, if you ask Saifedean, I'm sure if you ask Ken, I'm sure if you ask Opti, like, you don't have actual capitalism today. You have crony capitalism. And I've had very long discussions leading the answer. I've had very long discussions with like Jeff Booth, and the way that he phrases it is so fascinating. He's like, Nico, listen, under a central banking system, you don't understand. The far left and the far right are exactly the same. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, it's exactly the same thing. It's the intervention of the state into the free markets, right? That's literally what it is, right? So again, it's like American capitalism. What does that mean? I would say that question is wrong, because what is the other economic model to capitalism, right? Like, we know that doesn't work. We've tried that for 100 years. It didn't really lead to good outcomes, right? So the phrasing is like, look, is the far left a threat to it? Is the far right? No, you know what the number one threat, to use their framing and everything, to American capitalism is? The central bank of the United States. I would say that is the number one threat, not only to American capitalism, to use their words, but just people in general, right? The dignity and the well-being of the average everyday Joe in America. You know what the number one threat is? It's not Trumpism and it's not the left. It's literally the central bank. But of course, leave it to the Financial Times, right? Literally the fiat times, as we like to call it here at Simply Bitcoin, that is no friend of Bitcoin, has attacked Bitcoin left and right, to come up with a question that is framed to ensure that the answer to that question is contained. It gives you a certain worldview, because that's a loaded question. That question's incorrect. I would have said, I refuse to answer that question. That question has incorrect framing. I would say there is no such thing as American capitalism. There's free market or massive state intervention. Those are the two economic models. Top-down economics or the free market. Those are the two models, right? We know the top-down doesn't work very well. Like, there's history. We have the receipts there. The free market works pretty well, right? What is breaking down the free market? What is taking away the social mobility that people have in society? It's the central bank. What is taking away the ability for people to afford homes? It's the central bank. What is driving the massive wealth inequality? I have to read Max Kaiser's quote here because it's absolutely hilarious. There's the have-nots and then the have-yachts class. What is driving that? It's the central bank. So you got to answer that. You got to hit that question dead on, rather than, you can't even accept the framing. Someone asked me, I said, no. That framing is incorrect. That is a loaded leading question. That is bad journalism. You're trying to paint a certain narrative. Kent, what are your thoughts, bro?
Oh man, that's a hall pass though. Then you get to answer whatever question you feel like. So I wouldn't answer it, but I think you're totally right. And I think this is, you know, Jeff Booth talks about it a lot, like how the existing, like Bitcoin is a different system. And I very much believe you focus on building the new system instead of fighting the existing one. And as it becomes apparent that this is a better system, people will just naturally migrate, right? So that's where my energy and effort is going. But I think Jeff Booth points it out in a very accurate and succinct way that it is natural, if Bitcoin is a disruptor to the incumbent system, that the incumbent system is going to fight to maintain its relevance and its power and its tenacity, right? And so it's going to attack this Bitcoin system. And so I think it's natural, actually, and this is a natural outcome of that system, the fiat times, right? The financial times, like, you know, you can't convince a man to go against how he's made all his money and say that thing he's made it on, he doesn't actually understand. I mean, that's a massive ego trap for most of TradFi. And it's the reason why these like meek Bitcoin community folks are like, yeah, this is actually money. It's because we don't have all that like trappings of TradFi. And we can say, I was wrong. I didn't understand what money was. And now that I've studied Bitcoin, like, yeah, that's just better money. And so I'm going to adopt this instead of that. You know, traditional finance can't do that because they built an entire, empire based on something that's frankly a delusion. It's hard to admit that you've built it on a delusion. Like, more power to the Michael Saylors and the Ray Dalios of the world for doing so. But at the end of the day, yes, that's just the existing system, like what you're talking about with that framing. That's just the existing incumbent system trying to fight to maintain control and relevancy. And again, hats off to Ray Dalio for being transparent about the entire interview instead of letting that article stand as is, so that we can actually see what his words are and see that he was actually like, basically his response was to dodge the entire framing completely and say, look, this is what always causes these cycles. Now you can argue about those particular causes, but at the end of the day, he just sidestepped it. I think he's a smart enough dude that understood, like, this is Financial Times trying to bring me into a trap here, and I'm gonna skip it. Because I mean, at the end of the day, American capitalism, that's a nonsensical idea. Capitalism is capitalism. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry we don't actually have capitalism, because the means of production of money is absolutely contained within a central body. If your means of production of money, the fundamental good that goes in any transaction you conduct, is controlled by somebody else, that's not capitalism. Sorry, I'm sorry if you think it is. It's just not free markets. We actually have to have free money to have free markets. And it's very interesting that that Bitcoin is the thing that actually breaks it, but the means of production of Bitcoin, anybody can participate in. And this is what I think of as like the second 0-to-1 innovation of Bitcoin. The first being the decentralized, immutable, uncensorable ledger that we know and love, but the second being a decentralized money printer. Anybody that mines can actually generate their own Bitcoin. All you got to do is follow the rules of the network, and you can take part in the decentralized money printer of Bitcoin. And so I think that it's money that anybody can produce that actually is creating free money that liberates capitalism. So it's a weird dynamic to where it's like money produced in common is actually going to lead to capitalism and free money again for the public, which we haven't had since we left the gold standard.
Absolutely. I think that's a really important point, and I think that's why that question is so tricky and it's so loaded, is it's forcing you to pick a side, right? It's like, is it the right or is it the left that's breaking down capitalism? And you're like, wait a second. No. You don't understand. We live in a system of crony capitalism. We don't live in a capitalistic free market system. But again, as you said, Kent, you know, their livelihoods depend on the fiat system. It's not called the fiat times, the AKA Financial Times, for no reason, right? Anyways, guys, this is gonna be a fantastic show. We have so much to cover today. We got Kent in the house. Kent is the CEO of SAS Mining, Bitcoin mining as a service. We're going to be talking about that towards the end of the show, so you guys are going to want to stay tuned.
A little flip. We're going to switch it up a little bit, Kent. We want to dive into the core knots debate a little bit. We're going to get it from a miner's perspective, and then of course we'll talk SAS.
Oh, okay. Oh, this is going to be a spicy episode. We're going to be giving away some sats as well towards the end of the show. So you guys are going to want to stick around. And during the numbers, I got a clip of Larry Lepard talking about basically what we've been talking about the whole beginning of the show. And then something interesting for you guys. I saw this article in the morning. Well, Opti and I were crafting in the Simply crew. We're crafting the show. And I saw this and I was like, this is very interesting. But essentially the headline is Bitcoin may break red September cycle for the third consecutive year. And guess what? Opti was celebrating this morning. Nice. He went from nihilistic fields to optimist fields, even though Bitcoin's only at 112K. I've never seen a smile that big on Opti's face before.
Well, you shut me down. You're like, don't jinx it. I definitely think.
Don't jinx it.
I definitely think, guys. I'm thinking. I'm not going to say it. So
you guys are going to want to stay tuned for that. We got an incredible show. We're going to be talking about Knott's Core. Again, is it going to be a red September, a green September? We'll see about. We'll check it out. And then, of course, Saz Mining and Larry Lepard. So it's going to be a loaded show. But before we jump into all that, I do want to give an incredibly special shout out. Of course, you guys know the deal. Simply Bitcoin is powered by our amazing partners. We would not be on air today if it wasn't for our partners. And of course, our lead sponsor, bitcoinwell.com, the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. To get started, you put in your email address. It takes 2 to 5 minutes to get signed up, and bada bing, bada boom, you are ready to buy Bitcoin. If you're a higher net worth individual looking to buy $50,000 worth of Bitcoin or more, and you want the same white glove service, you want the same service that only Bitcoin Well can provide, which is automatic self-custody, meaning when you buy Bitcoin on the exchange, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address. Doesn't even give you the opportunity to leave the money on the exchange. Check out Bitcoin Well Infinite. To get started, go to bitcoinwell.com/OTC. Again, this is tailored for people that want to buy $50,000 worth of Bitcoin or more. So if it's a family office, a high net worth individual, trust, organizations, you have to go to bitcoinwell.com/OTC today to get started. All right, everybody, let's start the show. We have tons to talk about. We'll be right back in just a bit. I want to give a shout out to our partner, StampSeed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed phrases really secure? StampSeed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need for you to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates. Instead of just writing them down on paper, paper is fragile. Titanium plates are strong. Your words are actually stamped into the titanium plate with this hammer and these letter stamping tools. Once the words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They are also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and time-proof. And now you can customize your titanium seed plates. You can upload your design or logo and they will laser engrave it on the back of your seed plate, the opposite side of where the words are. Stamp your seed on StampSeed and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the stampseed.com store. All right, guys, don't write down your seed words on paper. Stamp them into titanium only on stampseed.com. And again, use promo code SIMPLY. Again, promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is $112,380. Block height, 913,042. Sats per dollar, 890 sats per dollar. Market cap, 2.24 trillion. Bitcoin versus gold market cap, 8.84%. Decline from all-time high, negative 9.8%. Realized monetary inflation, 0.84%. In the grand scheme of things, Bitcoin continues to take fiat currencies to absolute school. They're trying to normalize 3% inflation now. Again, Bitcoin is just, you know, taking them to school. I don't know what else to say. Anyways, here's the one, the only legendary Larry Lepard. And guess what? He's talking exactly what we were talking about in the beginning of the show. Exactly what Ray Dalio was talking about. Exactly what Lynn Alden was talking about. Exactly what Max Kaiser was talking about. Dude, that Max Kaiser quote can't get out of my head. The have-nots and the have-yachts. That's effing hilarious. Anyways, here's Larry Lepard. Let's check out what he has to say. And he, of course, he's talking about the reset. This is exactly what Ray Dalio was talking about. Ray Dalio predicts it's going to happen in the next 3 years. I would say if that were to come true, like the thing is like yeah, it would pump our bags, like fantastic. But like I wouldn't be too happy about it. Like it just wouldn't like. It wouldn't be nice. Like, it wouldn't be nice for most people don't hold Bitcoin. Like, that's the reality. Like, if everyone held Bitcoin, it'd be a different story. Most people don't hold Bitcoin. Most people still think Bitcoin is a joke. Okay. So like, if the music stops and you don't have a chair, like, that's not gonna be too nice, right? It's not gonna be too nice. Anyways, here is Larry Lepard. Let's check out what he has to say.
If we're in a sovereign debt crisis, and I think we are, and if we're gonna have a lot of inflation, I think we do. And if we're going to go to have a monetary reset, there are going to be real winners and losers. And you're not going to get a do-over. You know, you're not going to get a do-over. It's not going to be like, oh gosh, I missed it. Maybe I'll, you know. I mean, it's like we could wake up one day and the government could say, you know, we're going to a gold standard. We're taking the price of gold up to $20,000. Well, you either own gold and gold mining stocks or you don't. They're going to go up enormously. The same thing with Bitcoin. I mean, you know, the U.S. could say we're going to do a strategic Bitcoin reserve and the Bitcoin price could triple. Well, if you don't have any, you don't benefit from that. So there will be, you know, because of the risk of monetary debasement and the fact that there will be no do-over, I would just strongly encourage all of your listeners to have some allocation of their wealth into things that the government can't print. The government can't print gold, government can't print silver, government can't print Bitcoin, and the government can print dollars, and they're going to print a shitload of dollars, in my opinion.
I mean, is it like, I think, Opti, I think we might be onto something, bro. I don't know. I'm just saying, bro. Just saying.
I don't ingest the fiat propaganda anymore. I ingest the Bitcoin propaganda. So yes, we are right.
80 IQs for the win, bro. The 80 IQs
42 IQ.
Anyways,
no, but seriously,
is it just a continuation of the intro? Basically?
Yeah, exactly.
I should have played that during the intro.
Yeah, I do want to kind of mention one thing that Larry said, which I think is really like the big idea here is like we do, as Kent was saying earlier, we do live in this kind of like fantasy land right now, you know, especially when it comes to like economics and finances and coming out of politicians and stuff. Is like everyone can win. Like, you know, we can print money for, you know, whatever problem we want to, and it's not going to affect you guys. Just trust us. A little more printing. But when you hear Larry kind of explain it, it's like, guys, there will be winners and losers. Like, there are winners and losers. This is like, I hate using the zero-sum game kind of, perspective. But if we do end up in a hyperinflationary scenario, like a la Weimar Republic type stuff, like, there will be real losses here. Like, there will be real struggle. And as Greg Foss was saying a long time ago, it's like Bitcoin is an insurance on all of this craziness going on. And we even have Larry Fink saying this now. He's saying something very similar. It's like, if you don't trust your currency holding its value, if you don't trust governments, you buy Bitcoin. Like, Bitcoin is the currency of not trusting. Remember, I forget who it was. I think it might have been Larry Fink as well, or it was like Warren Buffett or something. Like, Bitcoin is the money of not trusting, and they kind of made it seem like a bad thing. And it's like, no, that's what it is. It's like, if you have no faith in these institutions, if you have no faith in central banks controlling the currency, then you buy Bitcoin. And it's a very low hanging fruit. It's like, look, that 1% you're putting into Bitcoin, if that rest of that 99% of your wealth goes to zero, that's the one thing that's going to save you. Like, it's a very low bar to cross. It's like, I know Nico and I say this on the show constantly of like, go all in on Bitcoin, buy as much as you can. But we're young and we look at the system a little different than people that are maybe more entrenched in it. But if you are, like just buying a little bit could be the one thing that saves you. And look, I don't like to fear monger here because, you know, I just don't think it's really good taste. It's more about, like someone asked, is like, are Bitcoiners wishing on the collapse of the fiat system, or are we preparing for the fiat system to collapse? And I would say, you know, it depends who you ask. Some people are wishing to see it collapse, acceleration, etc. I think most of us are just kind of ensuring that if this does come, we will be okay. Like, we are here to just protect ourselves, because from all the data, from all the information, it's not looking good. And who knows how long they can kick this can down the road. But a little bit insurance goes a long way. And that's kind of how this Bitcoin thing should be looked at for most people, probably. It's like there will be winners and losers, and you want to protect yourself today.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. Anyways, Kent, what's your take on this? Because I feel like the first 50 minutes of this show has been basically the same theme. And again, this wasn't a Simply Bitcoin article, but Forbes is even basically saying it. But, you know, if like I'm a common sense type of guy, right? And if Ray Dalio, Lynn Alden, Lawrence Lepard, James Lavish, you just roll it out. These hyper intelligent people, I don't even think like that. I'm like media brain. Like, I don't think, my brain doesn't even think in that thing. But if we're all reaching the same conclusion, I mean, like, even if you don't fully believe in Bitcoin, right? Like, even if you're just like, look, like, this is way too risky, it's not backed by anything, like, what does it cost you to have a 1 to 2% insurance fund? Like, what if you're wrong, right? That 1 to 2% could save that 98% that you just don't choose to allocate to Bitcoin. Like, that's what I would say at this point, because we're all seeing the same thing. Like, and different layers of education, different layers of polish, different layers of intelligence, like different levels of intelligence. But everyone is seeing the same thing we are. It's incredibly obvious. And even Ray Dalio is coming to the same conclusion that Larry Lepard is coming to, that we're coming to. It's like, look, like, when the system breaks and governments are going to have to peg it to a hard asset, historically that's been gold. Maybe this time it's Bitcoin. You know, the prices of those assets tend to rise. And are you going to get caught holding the bag? That's the question, right? Anyways, I'm going to pass it on to Kent, and then we hit the news. The news is going to be a little bit more more bullish, I would say.
How does it get more bullish than this, Nico? Come on now. We're basically saying go all in on Bitcoin and save yourself, right? No, I'm teasing. I'm if you didn't notice, that was sarcasm. No, the way I look at it is I could summarize all of this by saying, you know, you can choose to ignore gravity, but you can't really ignore the effects of gravity. I'm sorry, even if you want to. And I think economics has a direct impact on all of us, whether we want to admit it or not. It's considered a soft science, not a hard science. And I in my mind, I've theorized, okay, if Bitcoin becomes the anchor in the economy over time, which I believe is what's happening, and it's a messy, nasty process to get there. But if Bitcoin becomes like the anchor in economics, does economics turn into a hard science over time? Because now we've got a constant with Bitcoin anchoring the whole thing. Remains to be seen. But I think the fundamental point that Lawrence is saying there is, like, get something that's outside the system. Get something that's outside of human control. Because if it's within human control, it is natural for human systems of power to try to maintain that power. And that's all that money printing is about, is they're trying to maintain control and status. And it's all an ego trapping game. And this is why, like, fundamentally, like, I love Bitcoin and am a hardcore Bitcoiner. I don't consider myself a maxi, but what I want to see is human flourishing. And what I've seen in my study of monetary history, which is what you have to study to actually get to the point where you realize, oh, Bitcoin is the best thing since sliced bread, is, look, you look at the 5,000 years of human history, and it's never once ended well when money printing has been centralized. It always ends badly. And guess what? The smartest, the brightest people in the world, they wind up going towards the money printer. I'm sorry, because they want to somehow get close to that money printer, own the means of production of that money printer. And my God, if that's just not a drag for the entire human species, when Bitcoin becomes the global reserve asset, now suddenly all that human creativity gets unlocked. We move past this Achilles heel that we've had for 5,000 friggin' years, and suddenly we can actually have human flourishing because we've got savings that we can stand on and know it's not going to erode in purchasing power. And by the way, like all that creativity that's gone towards, hey, how do I get close to the money printer? How do I own the money printer? Suddenly gets turned into, hey, I need to go actually produce something of value out in the marketplace. What does that actually do for us as a species? So again, yes, this is the same theme, Nico, that we've been talking about for a little while, but this is global weirding that we're going through right now. This is just what Bitcoin's adoption looks like, and the other phase is going to, the other side of this is going to be amazing. But you know, hang on to your friends and family, and you know, batten down the hatches while we get through this.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with you, man. It's definitely going to be, look, again, it's not rocket science. If you use common sense, if you pay attention to the symptoms, if you pay attention to what's going on, again, I think a 1% insurance fund isn't going to, you know, it's not a big risk to you. And then just in case, like, look, like even if you say, okay, maybe there's a 0.5% chance that these bozos are right. Okay. There's a 0.5% chance that these, you know,
wow,
these
so generous.
These no, but I mean, like, bro, I'm trying to play devil's advocate, okay? Maybe Ray Dalio and Larry Lepard and Lynn Alden and Nico and Opti and Ken and all these Bitcoiners, maybe there's like a 0.5% chance they're right. Maybe I'm just gonna allocate 0.5% into Bitcoin. Right? Like maybe, right? And I think that's the case that Larry was trying to make. Anyways, guys, it's gonna be an incredible show. We still got the news segment lined up for you guys and the culture. We're going to be doing a little bit of a core versus knots debate. We're also going to be talking about SaaS mining, Bitcoin mining as a service, one of the best ways to acquire wild sats, or the best way to acquire wild sats. And also, let's talk about September. SENDTEMBER. We just made up a word. That's right. Air horns, please. Air horns. SENDTEMBER. So it's going to be an incredible show. There's 540 of you guys watching live on YouTube, almost 100 of you guys watching live on Rumble, and I don't know how, 1,600 of you guys watching live on X. If you guys are enjoying the show so far, make sure to smash that like button, share the video. It's going to be a great show. We have a special guest today. We have the CEO of SaaS Mining. We have Kent in the house. So you guys are going to want to stay tuned. We got a loaded show for you guys. We're going to be right back in just a little bit.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, Ledin, the leader in Bitcoin-backed loans. Unlock the liquidity in your Bitcoin without having to sell your Bitcoin. They've issued $9 billion in loans to over 10,000 customers since 2018. I absolutely love these guys. Not only do I have an account with them, but I also have a loan. And what I love about them is that there are no monthly payments, and you could pay back the loan at any time. As soon as you send your Bitcoin as collateral, you'll have cash in your account within 24 hours. Over 1,000 five-star customer reviews, and they've never lost a single dollar or sat of customer money. Go to learn.ledin.io/simply today, and you'll get 0.25% off your first loan. I want to give a shout out to our partner, sat123.com. Sovereignty isn't just about your money. It's about your communications too. When the grid goes down, most people go dark. Cell towers fail in hurricanes, cyber attacks, and blackouts. But satellite phones, they don't rely on local infrastructure. Iridium has 77 satellites in orbit, giving you a direct line anywhere in the US, even offshore. If you hold your own Bitcoin keys, you should hold your own comms too. Sat123.com also has everything you need to start building your Bitcoin citadel. Starlink, battery backups, Faraday bags to protect your hardware wallets, and much, much more. It's a one-stop shop for anyone serious about resilience and off-grid independence. Stay connected, stay independent, stay sovereign. Go to sat123.com/simply today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store.
All right, everybody scan the QR code on your screen down below. It's on the screen right now. And it'll take you directly to sat123.com or use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off. The awesome part about Sat123, ladies and gentlemen, again, sovereignty isn't just about your money. It's about communications. If you want to build a Bitcoin citadel without having to rely on a centralized grid, literally Sat123 has everything you need. Solar panels, battery backups, Starlinks, satellite phones. It has it all. So scan the QR code and use, again, promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off any on the store. Anyways, a quick update from our friends over at HIVE Digital Technologies. HIVE just completed phase 2 of its Iguazu project in Paraguay ahead of schedule. Their global hash rate is now 18 exahashes. They're producing 8.5 BTC a day, and it's powered by a 200 megawatt hydro energy from Itapu Dam. Phase 3 is currently underway, targeting 25 exahashes and 12 BTC per day production by Thanksgiving. Go check out the ticker HIVE on the NASDAQ if you want to find out more about HIVE. Anyways, so the day's news. Opti just came up with the word SENDTEMBER. Oh my God, is it even the thing? I don't know. We shall see. But this article makes a really good case for it. We're only 3 days in, so maybe, you know, we're counting the chickens too early. I guess that's the phrase. I don't know. Counting the eggs. Counting your my wife's looking at me. Counting your eggs before they hatch. I guess that's the phrase. It's something about rooster too, I think, is in there. Anyways, Bitcoin. Bitcoin just broke a 3-year streak of ugly summer returns, but now we're stepping into its most dangerous month, Red September. Ooh. If you've been around long enough, you know the reputation that September has about being Bitcoin's worst month on average over the last decade. And it's not just bad luck. Big events hit in this month. China's ICO ban in 2017, their mining ban in 2021, both slammed the market and left scars. From 2017 to 2022, it was 6 straight years of red Septembers. I blame Opti. But that streak finally snapped in 2023 when a federal court smacked down the SEC over Grayscale's Bitcoin ETF bid. That ruling carried into September and we actually closed green. Then in 2024, Bitcoin had its best September ever, up more than 7%. That same month, the Fed cut rates. ETFs exploded with volume and Trump-aligned World Liberty Financial launch. Now, here's the kicker. September isn't just a Bitcoin thing. It's the weakest month for the S&P 500 too. Investors came back from summer in risk-off mode. They're hungover. They've had too much sun. They're sunburned. They're sick of Opti. They're not tuning into Simply Bitcoin. They're selling their corn, right? That's what's happening in summers. And funds rebalance before the year end and markets tighten up. But history also shows that once September passes, October flips the script. The famous Uptober, and that's why we call it Uptober, one of Bitcoin's best months, second only to November. So heading into September of 2025, the setup looks a little bit different than past down cycles. ETFs are pulling in billions. These treasury companies are pulling in, they're raising tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to buy more corn. Companies are stacking sats on their balance sheet. And most importantly, I think this is the signal out of this entire article, the Fed just shifted dovish. Another rate cut is expected thank you, Opti. Nico can't read. Hashtag Nico can't read. SENDTEMBER. The chickens come home to roost. I got it. That's the saying. Anyways, another rate cut is expected mid-month. If that happens, Bitcoin might finally break the red September curse, aka the Opti curse, once and for all. So I want to get everyone's thoughts on this. Kent, I'm going to start with you. What are your expectations for September? Is it going to be a red September, or are you looking, because what are the odd markets, Opti, right? It's like 90% plus that the Fed cuts in mid-September, right? And the moment that happens, like the market's gonna shoot up. That's inevitable. So we might have a SENDTEMBER trademarked by Opti, of course. So Kent, I want to get your thoughts on that.
Oh man, price predictions, I will say, are not my bag. But I will say, if I look at the landscape of events this month from a macro standpoint, yeah, I lean more bullish than bearish. And I also think too that just in general with Bitcoin, what I've noticed is that you're better to bet on the contrarian side than on the groupthink side generally. And the groupthink side of this has been it's down, right? Everybody has, oh, Bitcoin's worst month is September. So it just feels like the trade is weighted to the negative right now, which means it's another bullish reason from where I sit. It pays to be a contrarian. But in general, when I look at this, like, yeah, in Jackson Hole, right? Powell came out saying, "Hey, maybe we need to push on that 2% and shove on it." And yeah, we're not really going to target 2% anymore. And to me, actually, I was surprised the market didn't get more bullish on that, because to me, that was like basically the Fed saying, "Cool, we're going to let interest rates rise." Or not interest rates, excuse me, inflation rise here instead of trying to keep it targeted. So at the end of the day, I see that the Fed is pivoting here. I think tremendous pressure by Trump, and that all just means liquidity in the market, more printing, money printer goes burr, Bitcoin goes up, right? I think the biggest surprise for me has been like the 4-year price cycle. Like, I see none of the euphoria that traditionally we have experienced in the last 2 cycles, this being my third. And it suggests to me actually that the 4-year price cycle is likely not happening. I mean, I could be proven wrong here in October, November, December, but you know, that's traditionally when we see the top. And the fact that we have zero euphoria in the market right now is suggestive to me that we're pushing out into something different and something longer. So, you know, hang on. Let's see where we go, but certainly getting liquidity in the market, and the fact that gold has already broke out, that's usually another leading indicator, is suggestive that we're going to break the trend that September is a down month, and we'll go up and to the right here.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. Let's see. What I'm the most excited for, Kent, and I agree with you, right? The price, once you start getting to price prediction, I mean, even at this point, Brian Armstrong is throwing price predictions. Like, I think everyone's so bored. Everyone's like 500K. But Opti, I'll pass it to you, bro. Like, I'll pass it to you, dude. I mean, you just coined a term that might be as famous as I think you just coined a term that might be as famous as HODL 10 years from now. This might be a legendary SENDTEMBER, and the Optimus Fields created that term. Are you feeling SENDTEMBER, bro? Because I heard you this morning. I saw that smile on your face. It was a real smile. I saw the optimism fill you up again with joy. That nihilism, I saw it just leave your body. I saw it just leave, and I just saw you smile again. Is the optimism back? Where is the optimeter? Because I know there's, like, you know, the fear and the euphoria meter, or whatever, the fear and greed meter. Where's the Opti nihilistic meter? Where is it? Is it in the middle between nihilism and optimism? Is it more optimism than nihilism? Is it an Opti bull, or is it an Opti bear?
I'm feeling bullish, guys. I'm feeling bullish. And then Nico yelled at me and he's like, "Don't jinx it." And I'm like, dude, I'm in a meeting with you. Like, who's gonna listen to this? What are you dumping on the market? But I was trolling this morning. You know, Bitcoin's back at 112, and it was like prices not seen for like a week. And I know personally my sentiment has been shifting, like perfectly aligned with the price movements right now. Dude, 100 million Bitcoin, 2026 for sure. No, but I mean, look, I think what Kent is saying is that's kind of the vibe I'm getting as well. It does seem like the cycles are changing. The market structure is changing. And I've laid this out on the show multiple times in various different scenarios, that it does feel like I don't know if the halving cycle is over per se, or if it's the business cycle, as people have been saying. But the market structure of Bitcoin does seem different. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do have a bullish September. I'm really like, I really do believe that Q4 is going to be an insane time here. Like that's the vibe I've been leaning towards. It just, everything is aligning in our favor in the sense of like what Ray Dalio is saying. You know, these rate cuts seem to be imminent. Last time we got some rate cuts, 2024, the price started pumping, and it seems like that's where we're going. And so would I be surprised if September doesn't? Yeah, I'm like the Chuck Norris of the price. Actually, it's the inverse.
Nathan behind the handle dropping fire.
I'm the inverse opti. So if I'm bullish, it's going to dump. And if I'm bearish, it's going to dump. So that's just how it works. But yeah, I think September, it's like what we've been saying. It's going to end up probably an incredible month. Well, it's not going to be like incredible month, but it won't be a red month. And on the one hand, let me see, what's this? Guys, it's raining out here. It's pouring right now. Okay?
Is it
that's
really?
why I had to run off. Yeah, that's why I had to run off. I left my window. My car window is down, and so I'm wet. I had to run out there because my car was getting wet. Anyways, I am thinking it's not going to be a bad September. Yes, it's probably not going to be where we really get lift off, but I don't think it's going to be a bad September. It does seem that the markets are pricing in a rate cut, so that should be pretty bullish here. And considering that Bitcoin has been above 100K for over 100 days, the market has been able to basically eat up these huge tranches of coins that are being dropped onto the exchanges. Everything is starting to feel bullish. And yeah, so when I saw 112 this morning, I did feel more bullish than I did on Monday, because we dropped over the weekend to, what was it, 108 or something like that. So yeah, I think we're going to start ripping, man. But what do I know? This is my gut feeling. We're breaking out of putting my TA chart boy on from what I'm seeing. We're breaking out of a descending triangle here, and we are getting set up for a cool Q4 of 2025. So yeah, 100 million coming in 6 months.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, 100 million. Anyways, guys, I do want to give a very special shout out to one of our partners. Guys, this is going to be it's going to Texas. Mining Disrupt is going to be in Texas, ladies and gentlemen. This is the biggest Bitcoin mining conference of the year. It's in Miami, but it's also in Texas this year. The first year in Texas. It's November 11th through the 11th through the 13th of 2025. Dallas, Texas. Hashtag Opti is going back to Dallas. And if you scan the QR code or use the promo code down below, you get 15% off your tickets. Opti's going to be there. I'm going to be there. Rustin's going to be there. It's going to be awesome. I hope to see you guys at Mining Disrupt 2025 in Texas, in Dallas, Texas. You guys don't want to miss it. Again, check the link in the video description or scan the QR code. All right, everybody, no more delay. Let's go into the culture segment. We have tons to talk about. We're going to have a NOTS versus core debate, and also we're going to be talking about SaaS mining, Bitcoin mining as a service. So we're going to be right back in just a bit.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technology. Why HIVE in 2025? Unstoppable growth. As the first ever public miner, HIVE's position to quadruple their global footprint, making them one of the world's fastest growing miners in 2025. And with elite operations that consistently top the industry in Bitcoin mined per exahash, HIVE's now headquartered in the USA. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're rewriting the playbook on sustainable Bitcoin mining. You can catch the latest buzz at HIVE Digital Tech or at hivedigitaltech.com. I want to give a shout out to our partner, BitcoinBend.io. If you're into freedom, Bitcoin, and building a real community, this is for you. Gain exclusive access to real-world, members-only, private clubs across the globe, featuring poker nights, expert-led classes, co-working spaces, educational meetups, live events, and more. Current locations include Sarasota, Nashville, Boston, Dallas, Las Vegas, and St. Louis, with new clubs launching soon in West Palm Beach, Scottsdale, Alabama, and beyond. Not to mention Bitcoin Ben's resorts in El Salvador. There's 3 of them, and they're absolutely beautiful. You'll also get access to the first fully backed Bitcoin bank with fiat ramps and savings accounts. It's called Private Key Bank, and you guessed it, it's based out of El Salvador. Go peer-to-peer with Bitcoin bulk buys, tap into home equity for long-term Bitcoin growth, and join their exclusive mining pools if you're interested in mining. What are you waiting for? Head over to bitcoinben.io, join today, where Bitcoin meets freedom.
All right, everybody, we are back. Before we go into the culture segment, we're going to be giving away some sats from, actually, our friends over at Bitcoin Well are going to be giving away some sats. We're going to be doing a live demonstration of the Bitcoin Wishing Well contest. Get your Lightning wallets ready. First person to scan the QR code today has won 608 sats. If you go to bitcoinwell.com/simply, you get 3 tosses into the wishing well, and every single toss you have an opportunity to win up to 1 million satoshis. Go to bitcoinwell.com/simply today. All right, Opti, I'm so excited. Bitcoin Core versus Knots debate. It's happening, and we got Kent in the house. I'm excited, man, because this is getting heated on Twitter, bro. Adam Bax jumping in, Bitcoin Mechanics jumping in, Luke Dash is jumping in. People are calling themselves, like, it's getting like nasty, bro. And people are like, you should make a video about it. We totally Sophie made a video about this, but
and we talked about it months ago, and it didn't really seem like anything's changed, but there has been heated debates now.
Dude, they're throwing tomatoes, and then at like 17% of the Bitcoin network now represents knots, and like it's a whole thing, bro. It's a whole thing. So whatever we say right now is probably going to piss some people off in the audience, because there's Team Core and there's Team Knots. So
yeah. So as Nika said, you guys have been asking for this, and I was planning on doing it at some point, and then Kent came on. He's like, what if we talk about this? And so literally last night I jumped on the phone with one of my personal mining friends, and we chatted about it. And so I think it is great we have Kent here from a miner's perspective, because there has been a lot of conversations from like a node runner's perspective. So I'm sure you guys are caught up with the debate. You guys are probably on Twitter. But so Kent, not to put you on the spot here, but maybe let's start with like what the overview kind of debate is, and then from your vantage point as a miner, what is your perspective?
Well, I think, yeah, so I brought this up because it does feel like it's getting super heated out there on Twitter, and you've got, some of the most influential voices are starting to weigh in, and I fundamentally think it does matter, but I'm not sure it matters. Like, there's a lot of talking past each other. Like, there's different levels to like this conversation, and for me, I come at it first and foremost as a Bitcoiner, right? And what does that mean? It means Bitcoin is money, and I'm here for the separation of money and state and the advancement of human flourishing, right? And so everything that is not monetary related for Bitcoin, to me, it shouldn't be dealt with now. Like Bitcoin, like I love the comparison of the Milan Cathedral. So not many people know this, but the Milan Cathedral took 600 years to build. And for me, Bitcoin is our Milan Cathedral, and that means that we need to have a very long time frame in the decisions that we make. And if you look at the decisions that we're making right now, I don't believe that we are taking that type of a time frame. It's our project, it's for our ancestors down the line, but we have to like hold the line and make sure that the decisions we make keep Bitcoin as a safe store of value first and foremost. So everything that's a use case other than money is not for me. So that's my bias, right? But at the end of the day, the change right now, if you really want to summarize it in a very, very simple way from a Bitcoiner perspective, kind of comes down to there's been a fence that's out there, and Core wants to remove that fence because they're saying that that fence is no longer effective. And I'm kind of the age in my life now where I don't really want to see any fences removed until I've studied and understood why that fence was there in the first place. And as I've studied why this fence is there in the first place, from a Bitcoiner perspective, it does not advance the goal of making Bitcoin the best form of money that humanity's ever seen. So I am not pro the change that Core is making here. And as a result, from the vantage point of the Kent Bitcoiner, I'm adopting knots on my side, not because I think that knots is technically superior or anything else. The only reason why is as kind of a political vote in our ecosystem that, hey, look, I don't think we should remove that fence. Full stop. That's it. Does that make me like pro ossification? I don't think so. It just means like I don't think that we should remove a fence, especially when in the Bitcoin community we've kind of believe that Bitcoin is consensus driven code here. And I know that this does not affect the consensus. So I'm not arguing at a technical level. I'm arguing from a spirit of Bitcoin level, right? So let me draw an analogy that I used recently when I was talking to somebody else about this particular thing. When it comes to the US Constitution, there's roughly two groups of scholars that study it and argue in court over court cases related to the US Constitutional Code. There's the spirit of the law scholars and there's the letter of the law scholars. And if you apply that lens to this particular debate, which I think is the most contentious debate since the block size wars, what you see is that the spirit of the law is, and the letter of the law people are talking right past each other. And the letter of the law are the very technical people see it. There's no point. This fence doesn't do anything. We should remove it. Like it just cleans up the code. And the spirit of the law people are saying, look, man, you just haven't studied why this fence is there in the first place. Like it just seems like, hey, why remove something that doesn't seem like it's broke? And so they're talking past each other. But I think at the end of the day, the spirit of the law people, that's where I land, have the voice on this one, which is ultimately like, hey, it's working. Like we don't need to change something. And by the way, it's very contentious. So the other part about this whole thing is I have to reflect a personal experience that I had that has me questioning. And actually Jeff Booth kind of touched on this in a recent talk about it, where he's kind of come out on the side of knots as well here, because he's come out and said, look, there is always going to be a moment in time where our implementations of Bitcoins were going to try to be infiltrated by state actors who are going to try to run this project off the rails. Maybe it's now, maybe it's not, but it's a healthy thing that there's multiple implementations that are coming about as a result of this contentious situation. So you can see the immune system, Bitcoin sort of bubbling up here. And now we've got, I think it's up closer to 20% at this point, fellas. 19% last I looked of Bitcoin network is now running on knots versus core. But what I think we're seeing is ultimately a decision that the Bitcoin community is coming to, which is, hey, look, this is more money than it is for any other purpose, this distributed ledger. And so I think this entire debate, while it's contentious and it's annoying and Bitcoin will ultimately survive, I think it's actually necessary for us to come back to what the roots of Bitcoin is, which this is a monetary driven project. So I'm for it. But when I look at all the contention and the way people are treating each other in this debate, yeah, I'm not for that. People are really getting quite personal and aggressive and nasty with one another. And I don't think it's right. I mean, just vote by choosing which code to run on your node. I mean, if you agree with me, go run knots. If you don't agree with me, go pound sand and run core, right? But I think at the end of the day, what we're going to see is, I think you mentioned this too, Opti, before the show, is a lot of people just aren't going to upgrade. They're just going to wait and see. And that's a healthy decision as well. But ultimately, we're getting closer to ossification. We're getting more implementations of Bitcoin. And this is just the way the immune system of Bitcoin transforms. But back to the personal story I started to mention. So I used to run a Bitcoin meetup in Portugal, and it was about an hour outside of Lisbon. So kind of the countryside, really. And I ran it for about 4 or 6 months. And I was getting 4 to 6 people, once a month would show up. And it was the only Bitcoin only meetup that was occurring in Portugal at this time, like circa 2019, 2020. And I had this younger dude show up at one of the meetings, and he came in and got to know him a little bit. Hey, why are you here? And asking questions, and realized he was candid. He said, yeah, I work for a 3-letter agency. And, kept asking questions and realized he was basically there to check out our meetup. And you know, I politely told him, hey, glad you checked us out. I'm glad you see that there's nothing nefarious, just some folks that like Bitcoin that are breaking bread together. But you know, get the heck out of here and don't come back. I don't. This is my meetup. I don't really like 3-letter agencies snooping about. So he didn't ever come back. But that always that cast a shadow in the back of my mind on what is possible within our community. And I cast no aspersions on any actors here because there's enough going towards both camps. But I think if we as a community aren't paranoid to some degree, and we allow ourselves to be naive about the influence of state actors here, I think that's to our detriment. So, you know, take heart that this is like what you're seeing out there is just part of Bitcoin's natural like immune system response at the social layer to, you know, create multiple implementations if we feel like there's a threat, and Bitcoin will ultimately survive. But I do think, although it will survive, it still has to be fought for. And so I think a choice does have to be made. You got to come down on one side or the other. And even if you're on the wrong side, when it's all said and done, which maybe I am, I think at the end of this, there will need to be a comeback together and a recognition from one side that, hey, you were wrong and we were right. And just, you know, we've admitted it before that we were wrong. You had to if you adopted Bitcoin because it meant that you didn't understand money. But I think that that's going to have to happen here. So either that or it's going to lead to a hard fork and be like Gcash and Bitcoin at some point. So we could get to that level. I don't think it will, but I do think that it is meaningful, the adoption of knots here. That's a clear market signal that there's a big contention within the community over what Core is doing. And so I do think it needs to be taken seriously. So if you're running a node, you're choosing with what code you're running right now. Which side of this particular debate you land on.
Absolutely. Yeah, so beautifully put, Ken. And I agree. This is healthy for the community. This debate is healthy. This is what Bitcoin's all about. And now I think the debate is taking on a whole other level where you have community heavyweights really, really spending a lot of time making their voice heard. I saw Adam Back and Luke Dash just going back and forth. So yeah, I mean, this has been a hot button issue for a while. I asked you guys in the poll, only 26 of you guys have voted, but 77% of the 26 that have voted apparently are running knots and 23% are running Core. And I've asked you guys publicly before, what percentage of you guys are running nodes? About 25% of listeners are running nodes every single time we run a poll on this. And I want to go back to something that Kent was saying. If you aren't running a node, you don't have a vote, right? That vote is by the wallet or the exchange or whatever. They're voting on your behalf and you don't even know what they're running, right? So it's incredibly important to run a node, especially if you own Bitcoin. If you have Bitcoin in self-custody and you're transacting Bitcoin, you should be running your own node. Like you should be verifying your own transactions. You should have your own copy of the Bitcoin blockchain. You should decide what version of Bitcoin you want to run. Again, like the awesome part about Bitcoin is that it's your choice and you don't have to explain it to everybody why you're running that, right? And everyone has a different like view on here. I remember I posted when like this was heating up and I was like doing some research like on all this. And again, like guys, like my expertise is media. That's what like literally I do. I make content, right? And I don't have the technicality to explain it to you, but just based on the surface level stuff, I said running knots. That tweet blew up and I got so much hate. Like I got love and I got hate. I got a combination of both. And it was like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, whatever. And I remember responding and I was like, Caitlin Long, I think reposted it, but I was like, look, like, I don't have to explain why I'm doing this. Like, I'm doing this because, I feel like it's important that, I make my opinion heard, but at the same time, I don't have to explain this to you, nor do I have to run the version of Bitcoin that you want me to run. I can run whatever version of Bitcoin I want to run. Bitcoin ain't a democracy. Like, you don't get to force me. Like, that's the beauty of Bitcoin, right? But again, you only get to decide if you're running a Bitcoin node, if you're running your own version of the Bitcoin software. And right now, obviously, the two most popular softwares are Bitcoin Core, versions of Bitcoin Core, and then Bitcoin Knots, which of course comes from the Ocean guys. So I'm going to pass it on to Opti. Opti, I want to get your thoughts, and then I want to double back, and we have to talk about SAS Mining because we do have their CEO in the house, Kent, CEO of SAS Mining. We have to talk about it. Bitcoin mining as a service. We got to talk about wild sats. Anyways, Opti. I know you're very opinionated on this, and I know you've already picked a side. And
I did what Ken said. I'm on the side of I don't update my nodes unless I see a reason to. So, full disclosure, I'm running core like 28 or something like that, and I'm not going to update. I look, my node, it's fine. I'm definitely, you could say it's set fence sitting right now. But I think that's the other option. It's like, from what I've been hearing, the two options I'm seeing, it's like you either run Knots or you're running version 30. And I'm like, well, what about just not updating my node here? Like, that's also a third option here. And there's other implementations that I think are also consensus driven. And so, like, I don't want to rehash everything that Kent said, but my kind of takeaway from this, and again, guys, I haven't done the huge deep dive on this yet because I like what Kent was saying. I've seen everyone kind of throwing dirt at each other. And so I've kind of just been ignoring it. And it's like, okay, they're arguing about stuff that's above my pay grade. And, I'll figure out once the dust settles what is actually going on. But I did do, like I said, a little bit of, tentative research. I read a couple articles. I kind of followed some of the threads. Like I said earlier, I got on the phone with one of my buddies that's a Bitcoin miner. And my kind of takeaway, and again, I could be wrong here. I'm going to say I could be wrong here. But my initial gut feeling was like, this feels like a nothing burger to me. Like, yes, the implications are huge, what Kent was saying. And there is like potential dangers and maybe these are nation state attacks and stuff. But my kind of just general feeling is I think people had expectations of Bitcoin going up. And what usually happens when Bitcoin doesn't do what people want is we start fighting about stuff that maybe doesn't have as big of an impact as we think it does. And so that was like my general kind of take of this. Now, doing a little bit of the research here, again, I didn't want to fully cover this. So I'm glad Kent came on today because I haven't gotten to the bottom of it. I don't feel, 100% comfortable really covering the whole saga. But my kind of takeaway of it is there is the not side, which is like we're filtering out the spam. We want, Bitcoin to be purely monetary transactions, which I'm actually a believer in that. I don't like JPEGs or any of that stuff. But from what I'm getting on the other side, it's basically like you can't actually stop all this spam. These things are going to happen out of band. Like, your node isn't necessarily going to stop all the spam. And then it gets murkier, and they're like, but my mempool can stop these transactions from coming from. And it's like, yeah, but all it takes is basically a couple of people to propagate these transactions. So you can't actually stop these transactions. Let's just put them in an area that doesn't really affect the base chain here. So that's like my really low IQ version of this because I haven't fully like gotten to the bottom of it. Again, above my pay grade, I just talk about Bitcoin. But that's kind of my view of this so far, just doing some kind of like very shallow research of it. Hence, again, why I think I'm just kind of sitting on an old version of Core. I have this, very left side of the bell curve view on my node is I don't update my node for like a year or two. That's just kind of my default heuristic here. And since this is the reason, since you see all of the people freaking out about it, I just sit back and I'll wait and I'll figure out, at what point I need to actually update my node and what I'll do. In the meantime, my node works. But there is something that I do want to mention. Nico did say run a node. It's not just enough to run a node, guys. If you're just spinning up a node, you're not actually helping the network. You need to connect these to your wallets. You need to use them with your Bitcoin wallets. That's how you actually, have an effect here. Just spinning up a node or, buying a standalone node and just chilling there, it really doesn't do much. You need to connect these to your wallet. So if you are choosing a side, make sure they're connected to your wallets, guys, because just running a node literally means nothing. You need to connect these to your wallets. And I've seen a lot of people say, hey, I spun up 6 knots. And you're like, you only really need one node. Like, are these connected to your wallets here, or you're just spinning up nodes to spin up nodes? You're just kind of like wasting money. Now, I know there's been a lot of contention on each side of the aisle. But again, I haven't done the deep enough dive yet to really, give you my like definitive stance on this. That's just kind of where I'm at the moment. Just doing some research last night because I was thinking about covering it today, and then I realized like I don't have enough information to really make a strong stance here. So that's just like my initial take on all this. And as things start to heat up, I'm sure I'll bring it back up on the show soon enough. All right, Nico, let's talk SADs for a little bit.
Absolutely. Guys, if you've ever wanted to mine Bitcoin, but you're like, dude, that's way too expensive. I don't have the know-how. Well, I got something for you guys. It's mining, baby. Bitcoin mining as a service. This is the way that I like to describe it. It's like if Uber and Bitcoin mining had a baby was more beautiful and it looked like Kent and Nathan and Wild Sats and the Amazon, you'd get SaaS mining. It's incredible. It's a fantastic user interface. It just takes the complexities out of mining. And some of the awesome things, Ken's been blowing my mind. Like we had a fantastic conversation. We got to hang out at Baltic Honey Badger in Latvia, and Kent was just taking me down the rabbit hole, and he was just like, Nico, like you don't understand, like. The original Bitcoin, like the way that you originally used to get Bitcoin was used to mine it. You couldn't even buy it on the exchange, man. We need to go back to those days. Like people have forgotten that that's how Bitcoin was acquired, right? Like people have forgotten that lesson, right? So this is what SaaS mining allows you to do. It allows you to mine Bitcoin without the complexities, without the hassle, without the setting up costs. It's plug and play. They have different locations all around the world. And the rig gets up very, very quickly once you make the purchase. And bam, bing, bam, boom. It's very straightforward. I think that was a good overall explanation. Mine Bitcoin, own your rigs, ditch the exchanges. And also another thing, one last thing I'll say before I pass it on to Kent is if you want to acquire Bitcoin below market rate, below 112,000. You want to get Bitcoin on the cheap. You know what you got to do? You got to mine it. I'm going to pass it on to Kent.
Yeah, no, I think the bada bing, bada boom was the perfect way to describe it, Nico. No, kidding aside, this is if you look at Bitcoin's acquisition history, how we've acquired Bitcoin over time from 2009, from the first block until roughly 2013. It was almost all done through mining. I mean, Mt. Gox, I think, existed during that time frame. But for the most part, if you were running Bitcoin, you were actually generating your own Bitcoin. And that process was, so the node and mining were together. It was a conjoined process. And somewhere after 2013, and I actually did talk to a couple of OGs from that time frame, it was around the 2013 and Coinbase opened its doors that was shifted. Most of us, and I think for convenience reasons, started to go to an easy exchange-based way to acquire your Bitcoin. And when that happened, there's a split in our timeline. And that split actually, I believe, has led to some amnesia. So what am I talking about? If you talk to any OGs, anybody that was acquiring Bitcoin in that 2009 to 2013 time period, there's not this disdain for mining. There's kind of a fondness that they have for it because they know that that's how they generated their Bitcoin. And I think in the same ways that you can go generate your own power by having solar panels on your roof, you go grow your own tomatoes in your garden, these things that are sovereign and that are independent give great value and meaning to us. The same occurs with mining. When you generate your own wild sats, you have a different sense of those, and those were generated outside the banking system. So generating your own Bitcoin is a cypherpunk approach to acquiring Bitcoin. And there's tremendous value in it from the wild sat standpoint, and the fact that you're getting more sats for your dollar on a daily basis, right? If you just take how much did it cost me to run my mining rig divided by how many sats I get, you'll see that price is below the exchange price. So you're your dollar cost averaging through electricity into a Bitcoin position. And this is why mining has value. It has the opportunity for you to acquire Bitcoin at a discount and outside of the banking system. Now, when it comes to SaaS mining, what we did is I came into this industry coming from rooftop solar, and I saw that there was a trust-based issue at its core with our particular sector of the industry, the mining industry. And what I saw was, look, at the end of the day, like I have possession of something that is our customer's equipment, right? There's no way for that relationship to be anything other than trust-based. So the question for me was, how do we optimize that trust? You know, how do we build our model in such a way that customers know that they can trust us? And the answer was actually the economics. So there's only 3 levers you've got when it comes to this type of a business. I can make money selling you hardware. I can make money selling you electricity, or I can instead align incentives and say, look, I'll take just 15% of the block reward. And by doing that, that means if I'm not generating Bitcoin for you, then I'm not getting paid. And so that's what we designed our business around. So no markups on the electricity and power. Those are cost pass through, but instead aligned incentives, and doing that along with a software-based experience that nobody is focused on to date. Kind of puts us into that Airbnb or Uber sort of category, which we call mining as a service. So yeah, if you want to see why we've gotten such good Trustpilot review scores and take a spin, you know, we do have mining rigs on offer that are live hash. So we get those going in under 24 hours, 48 hours if you're buying on the weekend. But we got those going basically right away. So you sign up, put down a credit card to pay for your monthly electricity bill, which we only charge you what you actually consume with your mining rig. Provide a Bitcoin address. It's your Bitcoin. We never touch it. It goes right to your wallet and is paid out when you hit the threshold. And we are going live with Ocean in the next couple days. So not only do we have the FPPS pool of Luxor, but we'll have Ocean to offer to the marketplace as a secondary choice. So yeah, we're pretty excited about the progress and improvement of our offering. And with a little luck, we'll also have something in Ethiopia to bring to the market in the next couple of months, putting us on 4 continents and building a global brand.
Fantastic. Guys, go check out sazmining.com/simplybitcoin today. Bitcoin mining as a service. It makes Bitcoin mining so easy. It's like ordering Uber Eats, except you won't get fat like Nico. You'll acquire a lot of sats, a lot of wild sats. It's fantastic. Go to sazmining.com/simplybitcoin to get started. You get $100 off your first rig if you use that promo code. Guys, we already give away sats in the beginning. So much sats, lots of sats. This is where you got to tune into Simply Bitcoin. If you guys enjoyed the show for September 3rd, 2025, make sure to smash that like button. Consider subscribing if you feel like we provided you value. I'm your host, Nico. It's my legendary co-host who's optimistic today, Optimus Fields, and our special guest, CEO of Saz Mining, Bitcoin mining as a service, Kent, joining us today. Guys, thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow. Actually, I'll see you on Monday, but Opti's going to be back on Thursday and Friday, and it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be great. See you guys on Monday. See you guys on the other side. Have a great weekend. Take care, everybody.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.